Hello, I'm Paul. Welcome to the second video on loops in C#. Today we're going to look at a second type of loop. In the first video we discussed the while loop, and now we're going to look at the for loop, which is intended to make iterations that pass over a more specified number of times. And to look into that, I'm going to look at the previous example. And in that example, the checking of the password, we had a similar situation already, because there we had to count the number of attempts you could make to type your password correctly. And this is, you might say, a very determined loop, because you can do it exactly 3 times and no more. And there's a pattern in how such a loop is constructed. It starts with the declaration of a variable that will count the number of attempts, in this case the variable tries. Secondly, the second part, you use this variable in your condition for the loop. So the number of attempts must stay below the maximum. And thirdly, whenever you go through the loop, you increase the number of tries you've done. And these are the 3 places in which this variable turns up. So it's a pattern. And the for loop uses exactly that pattern. And to demonstrate it, I've already made some code and copied it, so I can just paste it. I'm going to make a simple list of squares of numbers, and I've already made a write line statement that I'm going to add to later on. And what we're going to do is put the for loop here, and you will see that it has the same 3 elements that we had in our check password method. So we are going to declare a counter, and you see I use a variable name I, and that has for some reason become the index for a for loop, and it's more or less standard to use letters like I. And we have had the declaration now, and the second thing is that we make a condition that will determine how long it will continue. And in this case, it's just like a maximum. So let's say we'll stop at 49 or stay below 50. And the third part is that we do something with this counter to change it. And now we have the same 3 elements: declaration, condition, and action on the variable. And we can run this loop, except of course we have to make sure it gets called. So I'll have to put it here. And now we can run it. Oh, I've forgotten something, because nothing is being printed except the standard message. So I'm going to add an I, and at the end I'm going to print I squared. So run it again, and now we can see our list of squares. And well, this is not the only way to use a loop. This is by far the most common occurrence of the for loop, starting at 0, staying below a certain number, and incrementing. But you can also vary. So I can make it count back. So I can start at 50, and my condition will be that I must be greater than 0. And of course, since I'm going the other way, I'll have to decrement the value of I. So if I run it now, you'll see I have the same list, but running downwards. Yeah, actually, this one starts at 50 and ends with 1. So it's a little bit different. And there's more we can do. For instance, I can make step size a little bit bigger, so I can go with steps of 3, for instance. And now we'll have a list in which the number decreases by 3 all the time. So this is the basics for the for loop, and I'm going to do another example right away. The most common use for a for loop is to iterate over the elements in a collection or a list of some type, and do something with every element that's in the list. Well, we're going to discuss lists later on, but in this program we already have something that is a bit like a list, a very simple one, which is a string, which is actually just something like a list of characters. So what we're going to do as a last example is to take a string and print every letter separately on its own line. And then you can see how you iterate over a collection. So I've prepared some code, and again the only thing that's missing is the for loop and something to write here inside. So I'm going to add that now. Again, we have a for loop, and again we use the letter I to identify the counter in the loop, and I must be smaller than. And now we're going to use this string, and how many times should this loop go on? Well, it depends on the number of letters in the string. So we have to determine the length of the string, and there's a standard function for it. And here you see it. And now we don't have a fixed number, but a number we can calculate to determine how many times the loop should go on. And of course, we increase the counter in the loop with every time we pass through it. So if we would run this, it would just print the string as many times as the string is long, but we want every separate letter. So we have to do something to get the first letter, the second letter, etc. And I'm going to try that. So I was trying this, but here shows my past in Java. And there is a method called character add, and you get the character at the specified position. And I'll have to look here if I can find something. Of course, I've already tried it, but this looks really like what we should have. And let's just try it. And now so this counter runs like 0, 1, 2, and we get the element at 0 position, which is the first character, and then the second character, etc. And the only thing we have to do to try this example is change our method do the loop. And I'm going to put letters here, and I'm going to use the password from our previous example. And so let's run it. And now you see our password being printed vertically, letter by letter. And this is a very common use of the for loop. And this concludes the video on for loops. Thank you for watching.